Penguins are cute. Yes, there's no doubt about it. I know this because I'm standing at the edge of a glass-fronted tank containing a score of these wibbly-wobbly creatures and watching them wibble-wobble from one fake excrement-covered rock to another fake excrement-covered rock. The fact that there seems to be a rather large amount of excrement and an accompanying acrid aroma of ammonia wafting in the air does absolutely nothing to dampen the ardor of the group of junior high school girls I am accompanying on this school trip. Kawaii! Mecha kawaii! They say in unison. That means, oh, cute, how adorable. But oddly enough, the girls in their blue and white sailor-style uniforms do somewhat resemble the wibbly-wobblers in front of them themselves. A strange coincidence, perhaps. I look around to see if there are any other instances of nature reflecting self, and after a short moment I perceive a grumpy-looking tufted penguin standing off by itself, back turned to the squealing, adoring schoolgirls. Apparently it is called a rockhopper, and its tufted hairdo, hunched shoulders, and downward beak all lend it the air of a tired and grumpy English teacher. Uncanny, don't you think? I do, however, like this rockhopper because it does reflect the self in a way. So I decided to check to see if the rockhopper is up for adoption or not. I'm impressed and I want to take him home. At this stage, I haven't considered the amount of trouble that would ensue through having an essentially wild animal sharing my 40 square meters of space with the wife, the cat, the hamster, and me. But I'm sure that is nothing that cannot be overcome. I remain optimistic until the rockhopper, being considered for rehoming, raises its beak, squawks loudly, and releases a stream of foul-smelling excrement into the pool below. Disappointed I am, as I watch the cloud of ammonia meld itself with water, and now I understand why the water is milky and white at the same time. I believe it is an epiphany of sorts, but without the religious element. Instantly, the crowd of adoring sailor-suited junior high school girls squeal in disgust. Yada! Kusai! Which, yeah, I think you can understand what it means, really. Almost as quickly, I'm reminded of the fickle nature of these girls. The on-off buttons are actually the same, the one function only being activated at a time, either fully on or completely off. I also happen to know that they have the collective attention span of a goldfish. So, to draw their attention away from the pooping bird, I point out a distant structure silhouetted on the horizon and barely visible through the slight smog that hangs over Tokyo in perpetuity. Look! There's Disneyland! I shout out with what I hope is enthusiasm. However, it comes out more as a gargled screech that reveals my true feelings regarding anything Disney. It seems to work, though, as the girls, as one, turn their heads in the direction I'm pointing, squealing in delight. Smartphones pop out, peace signs are produced, group selfies are taken, and disaster is avoided. This particular seaside aquarium, located on reclaimed land just next to acres of imported Americana, is particularly famous for having successfully entanked a school of tuna. A difficult and challenging feat, as tuna swim fast and over vast distances. So the question then is, how to keep them alive in a tank? The answer lies in the screen of air bubbles that rises up next to the glass of the centralized circular tank. The tuna are scared away from the rising bubbles and are guided around the tank in a never-ending circular trek that actually mimics the vast distances they would swim in the wild. Pure genius, don't you think? The irony of watching these silver torpedoes swim in school formation whilst I am on a school trip is not lost on me. It could lead to deeper philosophical introspection. However, my students are more interested in the contents of the aquarium shop that sells, among other useful items, fluffy mini penguins that can be dangled from their backpacks. I guffaw at their shallow values and smirk at their need to appear unendlessly cute. However, I do buy a fluffy dangler to add to my collection of dangling items for no other reason than being shallow and valueless myself. Are there any more distractions here? Have we seen the octopi, the deep-sea crabs, the swarm of jellyfish? Have we touched the rough sandpaper-like skin of the shark? Have we noted how the coral seems to sway in the artificial currents? We move en masse to the next exhibit, which has less poop, but an equally cute array of puffins that seem to regard our intrusion with some disdain. They remind me of a group of pompous British gentlemen gathered at a club, attired in smoking jackets and cigars in hand. One of them looks disdainfully at me and seems to be saying, "What do you want? Can't you see there's a game on?" I look around for any signs of a game and notice nothing of importance. "What game?" I telepathically beam back at him. "Oh, for God's sake," the besooted puffin beams back. "Get a life, will ya?" "Rude little bird." I telepathically beam back an image of a chicken carcass slowly turning on a rotisserie spit and stifle a laugh as the rude little bird hops uncomfortably from one foot to another. At least the penguins had good manners. Speaking of penguins, or actually going back to their undoubted anthropomorphic likability, there exists in New Zealand South Island a colony of fairy blue penguins, cute as can be. So much so that the nesting site has become a tourist attraction. It can be found in the once prosperous town of Oamaru, which straddles the main route towards Invercargill. A slight diversion to the Dockland area brings you to the nesting site, the popularity of which is highlighted by road signs indicating that traffic should slow down and drivers be on alert for any fairy blues attempting to cross the street. The Department of Conservation has erected a set of bleachers, or viewing platforms, to give the humanoids a better view of the daily event. When the idea of this particular tourist trap was first mooted, the bleachers were a rickety affair that seemed to have been dragged over from the local rugby ground on the off-season and unceremoniously dumped at the water's edge. It was rough and ready. Kind of nice, though. Gradually, over time and over the years, various improvements occurred until the latest structure appeared, sporting such design elements as directive lighting, mood music, knick-knack shop, and a ticket-selling office. It appears that there's money to be made in penguins after all. Rather than just standing about without much idea or clue, proceedings have now been allocated their own MC, who will alert the gathered audience to the penguins' diminutive frames as they bob up and down in the surf before invading the beach like a D-Day landing. Odd how it happens with such regularity. At an agreed-upon signal from the most experienced or foolhardy bird, the fairies body surf the last few meters to the shore and then head at top speed for the shelter of their nests, roughly another 10 meters from the water's edge. There seems to be some urgency in the act. No doubt, if my Japanese students were in attendance, they would utter squeals of delight, a few kawaiis, and be dancing with the excitement of it all. Notwithstanding their absence, the spectacle of the many-flippered wibbly-wobblers wibbly-wobbling their way to the evening homes is an endearing one, and one well worth a trip for the gathered folk, if you are ever that way. Once the fairies reach the safety of the tall grasses, they suddenly change their mad dash to a casual stroll. A certain laissez-faire attitude pervades, and the feeling of peace after danger overcome is palpable. Urgent squawks are replaced by happy chirps and contented squeaks. Some even stop for a well-earned spot of preening. Rather cute again, rather odd, until the MC informs us that the danger the fairies were collectively warding against is the evil in the skies above, in the form of the marauding sea eagle that adopts Stuka-style tactics and dive bombs and strafes the penguins landing below. A nightly festival of blood and guts. Brave little penguins, people think. The gathered crowd swells with pride at the knowledge of this daily trial so stoically met. They cast their eyes skyward, scanning the grey clouds for the enemy, no doubt preparing themselves to step in as allies in the Battle of the Beach. However, the news that the marauding sea eagle is long since extinct, but that the group protective behavior remains, turns the pride to disbelief. But consider this. Perhaps the white froth of the surf and the waves is not due to the usual composition of seawater mixed with air, but other materials expelled from the bodies of the assembled fairies in the group in their angst before the beach assault. Consider, too, also, that, as a popular surfing beach, some protective cream to guard against the corrosive qualities of guano and sensitive skin may be a sensible investment.